Hello, my name is Kelly. Ever since I was a child, my greatest aspiration was to become a journalist or to be involved with magazine publishing. My passion for writing and my knack for staying abreast of trends naturally led me to pursue a degree in journalism and media during my college years. Upon graduating, I worked with various companies, and although they weren't particularly well known, I cherished the fact that I was living out my dream. A few years post-graduation, around when I was 30, I met my future husband, Matthew. Matthew hailed from a wealthy family that ran a successful business. This detail is significant because Matthew's mother, Grace, never approved of me. She often expressed her disdain, believing that I wasn't a suitable match for her son and criticizing me for my career in journalism and my academic background in the field. Initially, Grace's negative attitude and harsh words were deeply hurtful. It's challenging when someone continually undermines you, but for reasons known only to her, Grace felt it was acceptable to treat me in such a manner. Thankfully, Matthew was always quick to defend me against his mother's cruel remarks. His father, Larry, also supported me, standing up for me whenever he witnessed Grace's demeaning comments. Over time, I grew more resilient to Grace's jibes. Matthew even proposed that we should reduce our interactions with her. However, I didn't agree. Matthew was involved in the family business alongside his father, and reducing contact with his mother might have created an uncomfortable situation for Larry, who was genuinely kind-hearted. I didn't want to be the reason for any strain in their family dynamics, nor did I want Matthew to sever ties with his family. Through it all, I learned the value of patience and resilience, understanding that maintaining family relationships sometimes requires navigating complex emotions and challenging circumstances. Dealing with Grace became a routine part of life for me, primarily because our interactions were limited to just a couple of times each month. However, the dynamic shifted dramatically when Larry, her husband, needed to travel overseas for a business venture. Grace, not wanting to stay alone, ended up staying with Matthew and me until Larry's return. I had reservations about this arrangement, but held firm to the belief that family should be a priority. Living with Grace proved to be quite challenging. She had a knack for finding fault in almost everything I did, and her critical comments were relentless. Despite this, I managed to endure her presence without letting it affect me personally, as long as she didn't cause any actual harm. However, my tolerance was put to the test during a particularly stressful week at work. I was tasked with leading a major redesign of a section in our magazine, a project crucial not only for the publication, but for my career as well. Success could lead to a promotion. Grace, oblivious to the importance of this project, seemed indifferent to the pressure I was under. Her presence in our home meant she witnessed firsthand the stress I was dealing with as the presentation neared. On the evening before the presentation, while discussing my anxieties with Matthew, Grace overheard us. She entered the living room and decided to interject with her opinions. As I expressed my fears about failing in front of the company's top executives and potentially jeopardizing my promotion, Grace bluntly dismissed my concerns. "Well, Kelly, I overheard your conversation, and honestly, you probably don't have the skills for this. You'll likely do poorly tomorrow," she said, unsolicited. Her words were harsh, and she added insultingly, "Just see it as an opportunity to quit and perhaps focus on being a housewife." Her comment stung, revealing not just a lack of support, but a deep-seated disregard for my professional aspirations. This confrontation underscored the complexities of living with Grace and challenged my resolve to maintain harmony within the family despite our differences. Grace's remarks that evening crossed a boundary when she suggested that maybe I'd be more suitable for her son if I gave up my career. "I can't believe he married a journalist," she said disparagingly. Her words were laced with scorn, and it was clear she intended to belittle my profession and my worth. Frustrated, I responded firmly, "Mom, you're overstepping. I don't have time for this nonsense. I have more important things to worry about than your opinion of me or my relationship with your son. Grace seemed shocked by my assertiveness. How dare you speak to me like that? So it's fine for you to insult me, but not for me to defend myself, she retorted, turning to Matthew. Say something. Your wife is disrespecting your mother. Matthew calmly sided with me, stating, She's just defending herself, Mom. I don't see anything wrong with it. Grace accused me of manipulating Matthew, saying, Look how easily you turn your back on family. Kelly will regret this. Her intrusion into our private conversation and the blatant insults left me seething with anger. Matthew attempted to apologize for his mother's behavior, but I stopped him. He wasn't to blame for her hurtful words. After the confrontation, we decided to end the night and retired to bed. My mind was too preoccupied with the upcoming presentation to dwell on Grace's threat. The next morning, I arrived at work early, ready to give my presentation. However, when I opened my laptop, I was met with a heart-stopping surprise. All the files on my desktop were missing, and my laptop appeared to have been reset. Panic set in as I quickly checked my email, hoping my earlier precautions would save me. But even my emails had been deleted, including the trash. Overwhelmed and on the verge of tears, I explained the situation to my boss. His reaction was far from understanding. He reprimanded me harshly before instructing me to forget the presentation altogether. The weight of the situation was crushing, and I struggled to hold back tears, feeling both betrayed and helpless at that moment. When I discovered that my boss had a backup presenter in case I faltered, it became painfully clear that my prospects for advancement at the company were bleak. Devastated by the turn of events, I rushed home, tears streaming down my face. Matthew was still at home, and upon seeing my distress, he decided to take the day off to support me. He embraced me as I wept, and once I had somewhat regained my composure, he gently inquired about what had transpired. "What's wrong, honey? Didn't the presentation go well?" he asked, puzzled. "There was no presentation, at least not by me," I replied, my voice still trembling. "What do you mean? You put so much effort into it. You barely slept these past few days because you were working so hard," Matthew said, his concern deepening. I explained the heartbreaking situation. When I got to work, I opened my laptop only to find that everything had been deleted. "How did that happen?" he asked, bewildered. "It was both embarrassing and humiliating to have to explain it to my boss," I admitted, feeling the sting of the memory. "Didn't you back it up somewhere else?" "I did. I emailed it to myself, but my inbox and even the trash had been emptied," I explained, the frustration evident in my voice. Matthew's face fell with sympathy. "I'm so sorry this happened. What did your boss say?" "He was furious and called me unprofessional and lazy. He had someone else ready to do the presentation," I said, the bitterness hard to hide. "But you still have your job, right?" Matthew tried to find a silver lining. "Yes, but I'm stuck. There's no room for me to advance or move. I'm done here," I declared, defeated. "Don't worry, honey. You'll find a better job. I'll be here for you through it all. Just keep working here until you're ready to leave," he reassured me, his support unwavering. "Yeah, I'll give my notice now. I can't believe I worked so hard for this, and just when I was close, it all slipped away," I said, the realization sinking in. The incident left me deeply affected. I take pride in my work, and to have a project fall apart so disastrously was traumatic. Though I continued to work there for another week, my heart wasn't in it anymore. I submitted my resignation, counting down the days until I could leave. Throughout this ordeal, Grace's reaction was oddly gleeful. She once saw me in tears and made snide remarks, gloating over my misfortune. Initially, her words fueled my anger, but eventually I realized that her satisfaction with my struggles only reflected her bitterness. As I reflected on Grace's behavior, I couldn't shake the suspicion that her delight might stem from the hope that I would finally quit my job and become a housewife, or perhaps more unsettlingly, that she had a hand in the ruin of my career. The thought that Grace might have sabotaged my laptop haunted me, fueling a nagging intuition that she was involved in the disaster. Before approaching Matthew with such a serious accusation, I knew I needed concrete proof. Determined to catch Grace if she was indeed sabotaging me, I devised a plan to monitor her actions discreetly. I purchased a hidden camera designed to look like a smoke detector and installed it on the office ceiling. I synced the device with my phone, setting everything in place to capture any misdeed. The next part of my plan involved baiting Grace into revealing her possible involvement. I made it a point to appear visibly stressed and anxious around the office, hoping to draw her attention. Matthew was still at work, unaware of the unfolding drama. As expected, Grace took notice of my anxious pacing and couldn't resist inquiring. "What's wrong? Are you stressed about another project?" she prodded. Taking a deep breath, I confided in her, playing into her curiosity. "I've been given another chance to present my work, and it could lead to a raise," I shared, masking my anxiety with a hint of hope. "Oh?" Grace's interest was piqued, her tone laced with a mix of surprise and skepticism. "Yes, and I'm nervous because this is my last chance to get things right. I have to do well," I continued, watching her reaction closely. "Why aren't you telling Matthew? Is it because you're embarrassed about your job?" "No, it's not that. I just don't want to disappoint him again. Please, let's keep this between us, okay?" I pleaded, trying to gauge her response. "I'm not promising anything, but it'll be interesting to see what happens tomorrow," she replied, her words chilling. "Why do you always want me to fail?" I couldn't help but confront her. "I just think you'd be better off as a housewife. It's less embarrassing than what you're doing now," Grace scoffed, dismissing my concerns. Frustrated and needing space to prepare, I finally said, "I don't have time for this and I don't care what you think. Please leave me alone so I can practice my presentation before Matthew gets home." With that, Grace left, and I was left to hope that my hidden camera would reveal the truth behind her unsettling satisfaction. Grace's smirk as she glanced at my laptop was unsettling, and it lingered in my mind long after she had left the office. I stayed put a little while longer, finally leaving only when Matthew arrived home. Throughout dinner, Grace's occasional smirks continued, each one sending a ripple of unease through me. Later that night, after Matthew and I had settled into our usual routine of watching a few episodes of our favorite TV series, I decided it was time to check the footage from the hidden camera I had installed in my office. As we watched, the screen showed no unusual activity until around midnight. That's when Grace stealthily entered the office. I hastily showed Matthew the live feed on my phone. Initially puzzled, he soon watched in disbelief as Grace tampered with my laptop, causing it to shut off and restart. Matthew's expression turned from shock to anger as he realized what was happening. Meanwhile, the camera captured Grace rifling through my files. Unable to contain his frustration, Matthew stormed into the office. He burst through the door, startling Grace, who spun around, caught in the act. "What are you doing in here, Ma?" Matthew demanded, struggling to maintain his composure. "Oh, nothing really," Grace replied nonchalantly. "Then why is Kelly's laptop open? Are you accusing me of going through her stuff?" Matthew pressed. "I think you did more than just go through it, Mom. Did you come here to tidy up at midnight? And Kelly isn't the type to leave her laptop open. You know that," Matthew retorted. "Don't talk to me like that. I'm still your mother," Grace shot back defensively. "Yeah, my mother who seems to enjoy hurting and sabotaging my wife," Matthew replied, his voice firm. "We caught you on camera resetting Kelly's laptop." "You were spying on me? That's disgusting. How could you film me without my consent?" Grace exclaimed, her indignation feigned. "I didn't put cameras in your room. I installed one in my office, and you went in there without my permission," I interjected, supporting Matthew and clarifying our intentions. The confrontation revealed the extent of Grace's interference and deceit, and it was a pivotal moment for all of us, testing the limits of familial loyalty and trust. Despite the wrongdoing, Matthew remained firm in his decision. "Even if it was wrong, it's nothing compared to what you've done to Kelly. I want you out of our house tomorrow," he declared unwaveringly. Grace protested, her voice tinged with desperation. "But I'll be all alone." "I don't care. I don't want to talk to you," Matthew replied, his mind made up. The next morning, Grace attempted to delay her inevitable departure by busying herself with breakfast preparations and washing dishes. However, Matthew was resolute. As soon as she finished, he came downstairs with her bags packed and informed her that he had ordered her an Uber. Grace pleaded tearfully for him to let her stay, a rare display of vulnerability from someone who typically induced tears in others. Matthew, however, remained indifferent to her pleas and retreated to our room. Left alone with me, Grace lashed out, accusing me of setting her up. I responded calmly, yet firmly, "If anyone should be yelling, it's me. You're lucky I haven't shared the footage with your friends and family. If they knew what you did, you'd lose them all." My words effectively silenced her. After Grace's departure, I felt a profound sense of relief. Though still troubled by my job situation, I was confident in my ability to recover and excel. Matthew supported me wholeheartedly through it all. Once my notice period was over, I took some time off to rest and plan my next steps. In the following months, I enrolled in courses related to different aspects of my field, focusing on a particular niche that could propel me further. My resolve not to expose Grace was driven by a desire to rise above her negativity and prove my capabilities on my terms. With Matthew's connections, a benefit of his family's wealth, I secured several promising recommendations. His unwavering support, coupled with my experience, eventually led me to a breakthrough. I was appointed as the chief editor at a globally recognized magazine. The work was challenging but fulfilling. Along the way, the goal of proving myself to Grace faded into the background. In fact, during those transformative months, we had no contact with her at all. My journey to becoming chief editor not only marked a professional triumph, but also a personal liberation from the need to validate my worth to someone who had doubted me. Matthew continued to maintain a professional relationship with his father, Larry, as they worked together, but we heard very little from or about Grace. Larry hinted that Grace was still harboring some resentment, though he remained tight-lipped about the specifics. Despite this, I was relieved that Grace seemed to take my warning to heart. However, I knew a confrontation was inevitable, especially when I learned that both Grace and Larry were invited to a significant company event I was attending. The party was a grand affair, attracting numerous prominent figures. Matthew and I made sure to look our best, aware that we were now both influential figures in our rights. Upon our arrival, Larry and Grace noticed us and waved us over. We approached, exchanging greetings. Grace gave me a critical once-over and smirked. "Look at you, trying to fit in," she sneered. "Ignore her, Kelly. You look lovely as always," Larry interjected kindly. "Thanks, Larry. How have you been?" I asked, trying to steer the conversation away from Grace's snide remarks. "Yeah, how's unemployment treating you?" Grace cut in, her tone sharp. "Wait, you're unemployed?" Larry asked, genuinely surprised. "Oh yeah, she messed up at her job and they let her go. I've always said she's not good enough for our son. Look at her. She can't even keep a job," Grace mocked with a malicious grin. "That's enough, Mom," Matthew intervened sternly. "Stop siding with her. It's bad enough having to see her everywhere. We wouldn't have to if you just left her like I said," Grace insisted stubbornly. "Okay, that's enough. Either you stop talking or I'm leaving," Matthew warned, his patience thinning. "But Kelly, sweetie, if you need a job, let me know. It would be great to work with you," Larry offered, extending a sincere invitation. "That's kind of you, Larry, but I can't accept the offer," I replied, appreciating his gesture but choosing to decline. "Of course not. I told you she's lazy and incompetent," Grace muttered under her breath. Just then, my name was called out and the room erupted in cheers. I turned towards the small stage where the CEO was gesturing for me to come up. Excusing myself, I left Larry and Grace, Larry looking amused and Grace for once at a loss for words. Grace looked both confused and irate as the CEO commenced his speech, lauding my contributions to the company and my knack for introducing innovative ideas to the magazine. The room filled with applause and cheers, and soon I was beckoned to give a speech. Gratefully, I acknowledged Matthew's unwavering support and my colleagues' collaborative efforts that had significantly shaped the magazine. I concluded by thanking an unnamed critic, whose skepticism had unwittingly spurred me to excel. As I stepped off the stage, many congratulated me and curiously inquired about the critic, but I chose to keep that detail private. I rejoined Matthew, Larry, and Grace at our table. Matthew embraced me warmly, his pride evident, while Larry also stood to congratulate me with a hug. Grace, on the other hand, could only offer a cold glare. "Oh, Kelly, this is incredible. I can see why you wouldn't want to work with us," Larry remarked, his voice filled with genuine admiration. "Thanks, Larry. Although, I'll admit, if you'd offered me the job about 8 months ago, I might have taken it," I responded, reflecting on the past. "You should have. At least then you'd be paid more," Grace retorted sharply, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "Paid more? More? I could never put a price on this," Larry quickly replied, defending the intangible rewards of my current role. "Right, she's not worth all that money," Grace scoffed dismissively. "No, I mean, I couldn't match what she's earning right now," Larry corrected, hinting at my substantial earnings. "What do you mean?" Grace asked, her confusion apparent. "Do you want me to tell her, Kelly? It might come off as boasting if I say it," Larry offered, looking at me for permission. "Kelly makes at least 6 times more than I do in her current position," Larry revealed, causing Grace's eyes to widen. "Oh, yeah, she must be making way more than Matthew or I could ever imagine," Grace exclaimed, her tone shifting from disbelief to grudging acknowledgement. "That can't be right. You must be mistaken," Grace insisted, still struggling to accept the reality. "He's not mistaken, Mom. I did mean it when I thanked you. You've been nothing but a bully to me, and I hope to see me more successful than anyone in your family stings. Anyway, I have other people to talk to. Excuse us," I said firmly, ready to move on from the negativity. "Grace, Larry, feel free to join us anytime. Goodbye," I concluded as Matthew and I left the table, leaving a stunned Grace behind. Larry chuckled and raised his drink to me as Matthew and I walked away, a gesture of solidarity and celebration. I had never felt more alive and validated. It was an incredible moment of triumph, and I was immensely grateful for Matthew's support throughout it all.